Thanks a lot, Mike, and good morning and good evening to wherever you're actually tuning into today. So my name is Brooke Tapsall. I'm the CEO of DroneALERT, and we're a global drone incident reporting system. And today I'm going to be speaking about drone incident investigations, most particularly how to actually collect or how we collect drone evidence from incidences. So to give with start with an overview here, and this will just sort of go through how we collect the evidence or what we how we place our systems in the entire counter process. So I sort of just lay a little bit of foundation, not so much because a lot of people listening here probably know this already. So what is CUAV? For me, counter drone is basically a series of processes and technology across a number of phases. And this involves many, many actors, and that they all contribute towards some sort of drone solution, which in the end sort of gives you some sort of defense. So it's not one person, one company, whatever. It is a group of people that contribute to a solution over a number of different phases. And what are these phases? This will come out later. There's a pre-incursion phase, which is basically nothing's happened just yet regarding a drone in there, but it's your planning phase. This is where you get your drone management plans together, your emergency plans together, and you really need to understand how you will deal with the drone incursion if it ever happens over your asset. Then you have the actual incursion event where you deploy the technology if you have it, and this is where one of the evidence collection starts to commence, and the last one is like post incursion. So the drone in the event has passed, and really this is where you're sort of getting together the evidence and starting the investigation. So DroneALERT, as mentioned before, is it's a global drone incident reporting system, and we actually focus on grabbing evidence, public evidence and authoritative evidence. And our public system is drone detectives, and our authoritative system is drone first responders. I'll get more into each of these systems later on, but just to show where each of these go in the processes, we basically, in the pre-incursion is where you actually write in the public evidence and the authoritative evidence, how you actually will get that. You put it into your drone management plans. And our systems then will sort of be a bit more active during the incursion event and then post-incursion. So generally the incursion event is going to be the drone detectives, the public reporting system, and post-incursion is going to be more of the drone first responders, even though there is an overlap between the two, but that's the dominance between where they are located. So CUAV evidence collection and the processes. I'm going to do my best to actually sort of go through how we do the who, what, where, when, and why, and the importance, and we sort of get into some standardization later on. So who and where should we actually start collecting evidence, or where? The public, I think, are a very, very, very important contributor to evidence in a drone incident. So that is where we capture with drone detectives. Then you have more the authoritative people who and organizations which will capture. This is the police, the civil aviation authorities. If you're with an airport, it's going to be the air traffic control, government, military, emergency services, and definitely critical infrastructure asset holders. Depending on what asset is actually being attacked or has the incursion will depend on who would generally have the authority to investigate. But these are basically some high level who are the main players in collecting the data and the evidence. Where do you actually start collecting? I mean, as we see, drones can go absolutely anywhere and can cause destruction in a lot of places. But you can generally sort of categorize these into critical infrastructure and the assets here. So airports, stadium, utilities, ports, hospitals. I mean, that list there isn't exclusive. Buildings of importance, for example. So you have to think about those areas which would be a target. You can also just have incursions, which maybe not so malicious, but can be for sure. Crowded events, protests, sporting events outside, charity events outside, however you want, but just crowded events or just highly populated, dense areas in urban areas. VIP movements, sporting events. Think about the Olympics. Think about the Commonwealth Games. You know, anywhere you've really got a high coverage of people, and these are areas where you can. You can also collect evidence in remote areas like national parks, just to that anywhere that you sort of don't want drones flying. Now, what evidence would you collect? This is a question which I think a lot of people are asking themselves now, because they're sort of moving a little bit more away from the technology and are starting to understand that data is very important in an entire CUAV process. Towards the end, you think about it, but it's becoming more important, more prevalent in the thought process, in the process flow of what's going on. So what to collect? We recently attended the Interpol drone incursion exercise, which was held in Oslo, Norway. And we were able to actually do a little presentation there on drone evidence, and also gather a little bit of evidence or feedback, let's just say, from the authorities on what they thought was things that they should collect, because in a way they're sort of still learning themselves, or they needed some guidance. So as you see there, location was a very highly rated piece of information to collect. Now, we did get a whole list, but I'm not going to give the whole list today, because this is going to go into a report which will be published on the event. And Chris Church, who's a speaker later tonight, will be actually going over more of the Oslo event. It was amazing. That's all I'm going to say. I'll leave it to Chris to say more. So what you can see here is that the authorities are very, very interested in the location of the drone, the location of the operator, and basically the time and date. Now, the location of the drone and location of the operator can come from the actual CUAV technology if it is installed in that facility at that time, or it potentially can come from the public, to give you an idea of what's going on. So you have different avenues of where you can potentially take it, but you'll probably see now why it's useful for them to collect. Now, for us in our system, we actually collect 40 data fields. And we've actually put this together over time of looking at so many incidences, dealing with a number of them, that we've managed to put together the fields which we find would be actually quite useful to be able to give useful evidence which could lead to something of a legal nature. So what we have done here is probably from the Interpol event, we maybe got 10, maximum 12. And these did overlap a little bit with what we have, which is great because it shows that we're collecting the right data. But I think what I also found was that maybe they sort of don't know maybe what they need to collect. And that's where the importance of having something which has been developed over time by using so many trends in data collection for specific incidences is useful for them to fill up the gaps. Because there are always gaps. And the thing is, we have to say what is missing. And we did ask them, what is always missing? What do you find is your gap? And the main thing is the UAV is missing, which basically means your operator and your drone. And as you can see, that links back to the previous slide, where they actually want to know where they are, because generally that is the key gap that they have. And this correlates very definitely with what we find as well with our system, and the evidence that we have is that There's always operator not found, UAV not found. We know that a drone can come in and out very quickly before potentially any authorities can actually reach the site of the incursion. And as such, without that information, they have an evidence gap. And this is where the public reporting is very important to try and actually fill that evidence gap. So this is the key evidence gap that we are trying to fill with the public reporting. And how does that happen? We'll sort of go through a bit of a scenario here, just to sort of have an overview of how the system will work in a particular area. So we've got an airport, let's just say. Within this airport, our system has an area of interest over that airport where the jurisdiction of that airport is able to be exercised. A drone flies into the airport airspace for whatever reason, and we have the public who actually see the incursion and can start reporting using their mobile devices into the drone detective system. Now, our system has been designed to actually collect evidence in a way that is very user-friendly for the public. So also the questions that have been asked during that process flow are very tailored to the public to be able to gather enough evidence to be able to help the authorities to process a case. Also, it's meant to be done in a way that is very user-friendly. So it is designed to be on a mobile device because that's really what everyone is going to be doing. Also, we don't use an app. A lot of people ask, why don't you use an app? It's because a lot of these incident reports from the public are one-off reports. As such, people don't really wish to download an app just to do one report. So this is another reason why we've not done that for the public reporting system. Once the evidence is collected in the system by the report, it is consolidated into an evidence report, which when you are a part of the DroneALERT system, so in that circle, the authorities would have provided us with email addresses, for example, and the people can report, the public can report in near real time. So as fast as they can actually do the report and upload it. And generally the stats there are 2 to 3 minutes from start to finish, and that includes uploads, with images and videos. That report is also sent directly to the authorities, and they receive the report. So they can log into their system and their dashboard, or they can use this report and do a rapid assessment. And that's the main thing, because if you have an infringement or an incursion into the airport, you really want to know if it's a threat or not. And if there's a video or if there's a photo of the drone which shows potentially what the drone looks like, or if it's carrying something malicious, this allows them to also make an assessment of what's going on. So this is then sent to the authorities, and then they have that. This can then link down to our drone first responders, which is the system where the authorities collect their data and their evidence. So what does it really look like from the inside? What can some evidence look like from our system, and what is the actual value that you get from this, from just, you know, a picture or a very short video? So here we have an example of a video. And take a look and just sort of think, what can you capture from this to add evidential proof of an incident occurring? So that video was short. It was less than a minute, but even 15 seconds or a 30-second video or a number of pictures can give you so much. For example, just from this little video, you're able to see the drone model and the drone type very easily. You can clearly see here the drone operator. Actually, if you have a look and think about it, the guy standing next to the drone operator was the spotter, doing a fantastic job spotting, but looking at his mobile phone. So there's all these different breaches. You can see the environment and the location that he's in, which looks like a protected area, a no-fly zone, which it was, and that there's a lot of people. So they're also flying over crowds in a low proximity and in a close proximity, for example. From the metadata of the video, you can get the time and the date of the incident, which comes out anyway with the reporting. You can even get from here, potentially you can see where it's from. You can look into further leads for investigative avenues. So potentially down in the car park of that location, which happened to be a volcano in Italy. You can get some CCTV. You can maybe look to see if that person actually got off a tour bus operator or out of a particular car. And then from there, you could probably potentially even locate them if you could get it down to a tour bus, ask them who was on that tour at that particular time. You can take it out for social media appeals. I mean, that middle image is great for some sort of social media appeal if you want to. But the point is, you actually have something that can give you evidence, can give you leads where you would not normally if it was missing from a public reporting perspective. So this is why it's really important to have public participation in evidence collection of a drone incident. The public are more eyes and ears on the ground. And particularly this helps the authorities when their resources are quite stretched. If they have to go out to a domestic violence compared to a drone incident, depending on what it is, they have to work about where they're going to do their resources. So they potentially can miss something which the public can fill in. It also provides, like, as you saw, very crucial information that can fill evidence gaps. So if it's not just because of resources, it can actually give something of another angle of an incident. There was the police in one corner. On the other side of the field, there was a public person reporting, and someone up in a building also gave another. There's lots of different avenues that can help there. And most particularly, it can keep a case open, because many of the cases, as we see from the previous slides, there's no evidence to go on, which is why cases are closed and potentially no action is carried out. And having this sort of evidence from the public can keep cases open and to keep the investigation going, which can potentially lead to actually finding the operator and a penalty. This then sends a message to other offenders, intentional or otherwise, that they can be caught and that anyone can be watching. It sounds very Big Brotherish, which is horrible, but it's the public having more empowerment to actually protect their environment. And this leads to the final point of how it supports public safety and community. It gives the community the power to actually assist, but to also improve their safety. Generally, what I see as well is that reports come back from the authoritative users and whatnot, as I said, they want more reports rather than none. They would rather have 5 reports, 3 which are good, 2 which are bad, rather than none. So I think this also helps potentially the public when you hear from people that have actually done reports through other avenues and it's gone to a dead end, and they just go, why should I bother reporting, because nothing actually happens. So this whole process of reporting, making sure action happens, and for the community to feel empowered, to support the authorities. It's really, I think, what a lot of the actors in this entire process are looking for. So now we get into the authoritative evidence, and this is the one that's collected from the police and the CAAs, other people that actually have the authorities to take it further. They ask different questions. They have different processes. It's a new ball game from the public. Yeah. So just to give an idea of how this can work, I use a sort of similar scenario of an airport. Our drone first responders will have the area of interest in the system, as with the drone detectives. We have a drone flying in the airspace of the airport. However, this time it has malicious intent. It's carrying a bomb. And we've had injuries and casualties as a result of this incident and incursion. Our drone detective system from the public reporting links directly into our drone first responders assistant, so the authorities can gain information currently coming in from the public while they are also adding information themselves while doing the crime scene analysis. Also, it's very important to collect as much information to support the evidence from other areas, third parties, and linking in via API or however you need to do it. So the actual technical UAV data, which is more like the actual technology of a UAV. So this is basically taking it out of the sky. This is more of the radar technology, for example. A lot of their outputs can also be taken into drone first responders if they wish to share, or it is supporting evidence in this respect. They can pick up things like remote ID, depending if it's available. Otherwise, other systems, or if the UTM is up and going in a country, for example, this remote ID can come in, NOTAMs, and other intelligence sources. This is like DroneSec. These are other avenues of intelligence, of evidence that can all be ingested by the system to add into the reports, which go to the authorities, which increases the evidence that they have and the evidence that they have available in one location, which supports their investigation. So with all this evidence ongoing, they get a report at the end, again consolidated, but also in the system they have a number of dashboards which cover different areas of a crime scene analysis. I'm going to go through that a bit later. I don't want to get into it just now. And with all of this information together, taken in one system, which can be taken in a remote way, in a tablet form, they're able to actually then coordinate, because there's so many other actors involved in an incident, with other services. It can help with their communication plans, how they deal with the press, how they deal with the government, how they deal with emergency services, etc., and any sort of mitigation that they need to do, either because they've got another drone coming in, or they've found the operator, for example. And this really helps their communication flow, because it sort of also can become a bit of an operation in the end. Now, a little bit more about our authoritative system, drone first responders. It's actually based on the Interpol framework for responding to a drone incident. So the drone framework is the basis of our system. We've built on the foundations and the principles which are in this document. It was released to the public in May 2020. And it basically outlines a lot of processes on how to deal with the drone incident, and how to process the evidence collection, witnesses, victims, the drone itself, and drone forensics, for example. So we've actually gone through this document quite intensively, let's just say. It turned out to be my best friend for a very long time, and I've mapped all the processes, and gone through and consolidated as much as possible to remove any sort of redundancies, because there were some processes which were asking a similar question, but in two different areas, for example, and potentially adding a little more information collection in there, taking in the experience that we have. So from here, we've got, we give them a dashboard, which I think has about 3 to 4 main sections, and these cover like the crime scene analysis, the crime scene data collection, evidence collection. Then we've grouped things together also then in drone incident data collection, and also drone forensics is available as well. We provide case management. So this allows the users to allow permissions or access to particular cases, because organizations will have their own database, but not everybody should be able to access the same case because of privacy or for whatever reason. So we have a lot of functionalities like that available to allow case management and user accessibility. We link directly to the drone detective system if that's what they want, and also any other data sources if that's what they want. Now, a lot of this is also choreographed in the field when you do via an interactive map that we have, which allows the users to actually move little symbols around of the drone, the witnesses and the victims, etc. So at any one time, people can go in there and have a visual on what the crime scene, on what the incident scene looks like. And a picture paints 1,000 words in a lot of ways. So we've been able to at least put this together because it's a busy time when an incident is happening. It's a stressful time. So we want to make sure that the data collection is not missing anything, but is also as easy as possibly it can be. And it doesn't have any duplication in that respect. So this is how we've sort of designed the system in that regard. Now, the outputs here we have are the evidence reports. Each of them has an evidence report which can support, one, the drone detectives can report the drone first responders, so the authoritative report. In a way, it's another witness statement which can be used by the authorities. So once the authorities have finished with their case and they have enough information in their database or in drone first responders, they're able to export into a report. And what they do with that is totally their jurisdiction. They can use it to either take it further for prosecutions. They can use it for evidence in some sort of penalties, fines, jail time, court cases, however you need. But the main point is each of them can be used together or separately as some sort of support for the investigative process. And these help public safety and awareness of what's going on, I guess. And in the end, it really does support the authorities, the overall authorities with these outputs here. Now, as you see, this is very quick, I'm sorry. It's there's a lot of information going around. There's a lot of information you can collect. You are really applying, when you're collecting evidence at the authoritative level, a crime scene evidence collection process. So there's really a lot of details that are needed. It's like drone detectives, we ask for videos and images. In drone first responders, we also give the capabilities for video, images, track logs, voice recordings, so people can actually do verbal witness statements, for example. So there's a lot of evidence to collect, to store. And the thing is that there's so many different ways to collect it, and there's so many different ways people do collect it now, which leads me to my next point. And it's a very big passion of mine, let's just say, is standardizing how evidence is collected during a drone incident. And this is definitely for the benefit of all. So I sort of go through some reasoning and the benefits that I find in this section. So DroneALERT, our systems already very definitely start to standardize the data collection processes. We have identified for a very long time that this is a necessary part of the process of evidence collection. So we have done our best over the years to take on board what we see in trends and what we see from experts, etc. So standardizing the terminology, the incident types, the incident categories, incident threats, and basically the entire evidence collection processes to be able to have something that's quite streamlined. And working with industry experts and organizations and their feedback is very crucial in this regard, and definitely building on many years of experience to do this. So terminology and processes, I'm going to lump these two together. It's very important to have standardized terminology because this allows for so much information sharing and data exchange. And this is currently, I think, a big issue from what I have seen, because you get data about incidences in many different ways, different formats. People have collected something, which is wonderful, and they share it with you, and you look at the data and you're just like, what do I do with that, and how do I get it in my system to actually follow the processes that we currently do? And this just brings me to a big issue of what we do, which is very time consuming, and that's mapping the different fields of the information that we get against our own. I don't see any trends from any of the information that comes in to be able to change what I've done. If there's one or two that I've seen that I find useful, I add. But generally, you sort of have to go through the field of the data coming in and what you have, and just try and map it against what you already have in your fields. And there's generally a lot of gaps because not everybody has such a thorough data collection process, and that in the end sort of leads to a lot of gaps in data, which is quite sad. But this is why it's also very important to try and standardize the terminology and the process, the terminology used in the processes, because it's mapping the fields is a very time consuming effort that goes on. So how we try and do this is the same process and terminology we use for all the global reporting, and also we put this across both systems. So the weather we get from ICAO, distance ranges from the public reporting. We've done a lot of testing on what really can people visually see, and we've kept those ranges. This also does help you by doing those tests that if someone says, I can see something which is 100 meters away, you're sort of like, how reliable is that? The age ranges of the reports of if someone actually reports seeing the operator, we've collected over time the age ranges of the definite offenders and put them into the standardized format there. So this hasn't really changed over the years because it's pretty secure. What options you can select during your process of reporting, etc. These are definitely standardized over time by feedback and what we see. And just as mentioned before, the overall collection process. So if we're able to do this, and a lot of people adopt it, it means people from different parts of the world are able to report, and it will come out in a similar fashion, which means a lot of benefits, most particularly for data sharing. Other things we've standardized are the incident types. Now, what I mean by incident types here are basically the incursion types, let's just say. Now, I've categorized these very high level here, 2, 4, 6, 7 of them at the moment, and we actually collect about 17 incidences, different types. And how we actually do these is by really monitoring all the incidences and also getting intel from other people that know what's going on in the industry, but it's probably not publicly available, of where incidents is occurring, most particularly ones that are public threats. And we add this into our incident types, so it doesn't exclude potentially any public reporting of those incidences. So as you can see, it's really a lot of critical infrastructure. So a lot of them, what I mentioned before, airports are obviously the main one there, but you've got ports, stadiums and other things like that. Emergency services are high on the list. So people who are flying where they shouldn't be flying during a fire or other event like that, they cause a lot of disruption. Event airspace infringement. So this can be over the Olympics, the Commonwealth Games, however you want to put it. They're infringing on a space there. Near misses and collisions and crashes. These I've always separated because you get a lot of near misses linked to potentially an airport or something else like this. But then you can also have collisions and crashes linked to something else. You can collide but not crash, and you can crash and all this. So there's all these little subtle differences that come out when you've gone through a number of incidences. So we separate these a little bit and add to them, I guess, the main incursion area where they occur. We have incident types, I guess, where it's more to do with safety and security of the people. So we have safety over children, so their playgrounds and schools, and citizen protection, such as people believing their privacy is invaded and other areas like this. So this is another area. Protected areas and other no-fly zones. You can have protected areas. These can be in the middle of nowhere. They can be in the middle of a built-up area. No-fly zones the same. These are extra because sometimes some people just don't realize that they're not flying in a zone that they can't do. So for us, we're always making sure that whatever incident types we have in our systems are reflecting what is going on in the real world with the incident types that are prevalent, of interest to intelligence, and of interest to citizen protection. The other one that we do is the global drone incident categories. Now, these are a bit more high level. People probably have heard of these. You know, we've got the triple Cs, the clueless, careless, and compliant. A lot of people just stop at those three, but dealing a lot with industry experts and organizations that deal also with incidents, I've come up with a standardized solution or a standardized category here. And we've got 6, probably 7, because actually the last one, terrorist warfare, we separate out as well because there's subtle differences there. And again, each incident report that comes through in both systems can be given one of these categories as well. So this helps in any sort of understanding between organizations, between regions, for example, and it's the same with the incident types. There's a definition for each of the incident types of what is happening and where it can go. So we have the clueless, the careless, the compliant, the uninhibited, the criminal, and the terrorist warfare groups. The next one that we're working on, it's in progress, is incident threats. And this is basically more like putting in a threat level that we can assign to an incident. And this is taking a little bit more time than I had thought, gathering everybody's idea or how they currently would categorize a threat of an incident and what they mean by this. So hopefully this will be the next standardized threat categories that we can apply to our system, again taking in the fantastic feedback from experts and the industry and organizations to be able to provide a clear view of the threat of each one of the incidents that come through the systems. So it's very important for standardization of these different elements of evidence and information that we have, because it really, really does support cross-border knowledge sharing. And this can be at a local level, government level, global level, whatever it is. You're talking the same language. And that really, really does help when you're trying to actually deal with incidences that everybody's really trying to deal with. So let's get everybody talking the same language. It gives clarity of process and data that can be interchangeable anywhere, because you are talking the same language. This leads back to the mapping issues that we had. It allows you to build global standards and process flows and guidelines, which is really what people need. And most importantly, what I see too much, I think, is people reinventing the wheel. Why reinvent the wheel when the wheel is already turning? We just have to sort of make it flow quite nicely. So this can improve like the drone mitigation and emergency planning, which is part of the pre-incursion, drone security and management, which is pre-incursion, but also during the entire phases that we go through. It can increase the legal robustness of the evidence reports that we provide. But most importantly, it ensures that the industry is aligned, and it always has the best practices at the forefront of what's going on. They know the issues to, again, stop reinventing the wheel. They know the gaps in the trends in incident management, and this really does help overall. So key points just to maybe think about, just to conclude here. We can achieve more together. I don't know how else to say it, because if we actually want to be able to collect evidence on a global scale, or even at a regional scale, we have to be able to do this together, to be able to share it and know what's going on. So we need to write into the drone management plans how data and information and evidence is to be collected and managed, and understand who and how this process is going to be carried out. We have to encourage working towards domain standardization, because this trickles down and across lots of different areas that will improve the entire process. So cross-border knowledge sharing, the clarity of the process. This clarity of process, cross-border sharing, allows us to build global standards and guidelines. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And this is something else that came out of the Interpol event, where we asked some questions, is that people would like these standards. They need to understand what to do and how to do it. So this is what people, the authorities, the end users, the investigators that are looking for. This is what they really need. So we have to sort of work together to be able to provide that to them, because there's lots of information in lots of different areas. And this is why we need to keep aligned as an industry. We have to talk, we have to share information. We need to link projects together. We need to link companies together to be able to provide this, because in the end, what we're all looking for here in this entire process of evidence collection, of technology, is to be able to provide a solution that is manageable, but also most particularly is to deal with public safety, the domain safety that we're all looking for. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you found the presentation interesting. And I hand back to Mike.
All right, terrific. Thank you, Brooke, very much. And we'll leave your slide up there just for a little bit so people can see the website, because that was, excuse me, one of the questions that came up. And I'm showing it on the screen now, but it just said, how does someone actually report to the system since you don't have an app? So maybe you want to just quickly define who can actually use the public one and who can use the private one.
So the public reporting system, as you see up there, you go to the website, dronedetectives.com, and you're able to report directly on that website an incident. Now, this is for the public, so anyone can report. We go through a short verification process This is to ensure that the people reporting are who they are, they're not spamming our system, and it provides information for follow-up information for investigators to follow. So we ask that you verify your email, and then you can go forward and start to do the reporting process. As mentioned, it takes 2 to 3 minutes maximum, and it's if you also allow your location to be taken, this is automatically put in because we use location a lot. As you see, it's required, and we don't take any other data. Let's just put a disclaimer: we don't take any data that's put in there, your personal data or anything else, and sell to third parties. So I just have to say that because it's always asked. Because we're dealing with potential evidence here, so we actually take very seriously all the incidences that are reported in our system and the information that is provided to us. Drone First Responded is for authorities only. So this is a system where authorities can access through their own website, through their own everything. And basically this will go through the principles of the Interpol drone framework for them to process the drone crime scene and also process the drone incident in itself. So Drone Detectives is the public system. Drone First Responders is the authoritative data collection system.
Perfect. And Brooke, I'll get you to end your slide there just so we can have us chatting about the last few questions. So we had a few pop up, and I'll share the first one here. You should be able to see this, but if not, Tiago mentioned the data taxonomy and post-analysis seems to be an issue. To produce reliable evidence for a court of law, it should be automated and factual as possible. Now, I think that it's, part of a question, part of a statement. But what is your experience with it being completely automated versus, somewhat automated and a manual triage process? What does that look like at the moment?
So my background, just to help, is I actually used back when I was in Australia, remote sensing imagery for addition into court for breaches of law. So I've actually taken a lot of that knowledge that I have and put it into the system to ensure that what we collect and how we collect it can be as robust as possible. So when we get information from the public, they do go through drop-down menus and other things like this, which is all pre-programmed. So we know the information we're going to collect from them. We have free text boxes for witness statements, and we verify the user. So if they don't verify who they are, if they're not willing to share who they are, we don't accept their report. So if you actually are serious in reporting an incident, you shouldn't have a problem in doing that.
Mm.
So this is some ways that we go through verification of this. Also, we follow up with any sort of reporting, and if no one responds, it's gone. So we hope in that respect, we've removed a lot of subjectiveness because we're actually targeting the questions that we want from them. And it's not just going to be, let's just say, wishy-washy stuff that comes through, because as a judge, it's the last thing you want to receive anyway.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. Okay, and there's another question here that says, can the live collection of drone data footage, so video footage, be intercepted mid-flight and be used as recorded for evidence, if there's no physical drone? So I think we'll breach a few interesting areas here, but what do you think about that as into using a kind of a splice of the video stream of the drone as evidence, if that's possible?
I mean, if that's the evidence you're able to get, however you can, and you can upload it into the system as a video, it's going to be up to the authorities and how they will process that evidence, because I and my system do not have that jurisdiction. However, if it's potential evidence, because it actually shows something in flight, if you can actually prove it's linked to that drone and that operator, not just with the video, because the video could be anything. So that's the thing. You probably have to make sure you prove it with a link somehow. That's it. So how you get it, I can't really, be creative, but it's really up to the authorities on how they use it and what they do with it, because you really have to think how they can link that to that person. You've got a video. Do you have another video actually showing that together? So you could have two videos that would link that that operation in one. So you probably have to be a bit creative there, but possible.
Possible. Anything can be possible
Anything
sometimes,
is
but
possible.
the laws
That's right.
restrict us sometimes. There's another question here, Brooke, that says, is there any use cases beyond just evidence collection for just prosecution in terms of, say, data analytics or insights for law enforcement?
So we always, well, the one that I showed you, I guess, could be a use case that was. We can have to be careful how we say these things because it is. So I will say that this one was no charges laid in the end, but that person was flying a drone, and they were from a major drone company. They were from a different country, and they were flying that drone in that sort of situation to test the capability of the drone, and also I think to get some really nice footage to put in their promotional, something like this. I don't know. So there's a bit of a case that we can sort of mention in what happens. It's big or small with who is doing what. We always get feedback, which obviously we can't make public, from the end users of the information, and how they think things in the process or the questioning, etc., can be updated or kept relevant. So these are the only ways, well, the use cases or examples of what I can give you, if that makes sense. It's a bit hard sometimes to discuss some of these things because of the sensitivity of the nature of the evidence.
Of course. And out of interest, I mean, just thinking about it in terms of the data, you're collecting a bunch of data about all these incidents. Other than it just going to the authorities for prosecution, I think what is trying to be asked here as well is, can you use it for, say, deep analytics to start saying, X amount of incidents had this type of drone, or, this many incidents are in this type of country? Is that made available to anyone else, or is it strictly just for evidence and prosecution in terms of law?
I mean, doing trend analysis on your own data, yes, this is something that we do and we can do, but we haven't actually made anything like that public in that respect. Like you won't see any reports of that nature just yet. It is something that, we would like to do, but you have to be careful in how much you disclose, because it would have to be high level. But it definitely is something that we can do. We can understand, the main drone types, the main age groups, for example, the main incident types, example. So a lot of these helps us in keeping the system relevant with the standardization, the type of information that we do, type of questions that we ask. We constantly feed it back into the system to keep it relevant. So yes, you can do that, and it would always help with extra data, with the stuff that DroneSec does as well. These can be very complementary, I think, in providing an entire picture of evidence and intelligence, by combining those sort of outputs that we have.
Sure. Okay. No, that's really interesting. And another question came and said, every civil aviation authority today wants to make a drone reporting app. Why has there been no central one, and why are they all trying to create their own?
Everyone wants to recreate the wheel. That's why. There's a $1 million question that I've been asking myself for a long time. I don't know if it's because they want to actually retain the data. I also don't know if they really know what's out there or what's happening. for sure, I've been monitoring a lot of the portals on the CAA sites and how it's reported, and a lot of them have evolved, and I really don't know how mature they are. This started off when all this drone boom happened, let's just say in 2013, 2014, wherever you were in the world. They still had aviation reporting. So if you wanted to report a drone incident to say, basically tell us the tail number on the plane, it doesn't really help with a drone. Around the world, you've also got different authorities that deal with it. So it's not always the CAA that's the first port of call. It's the police in some cases, because the CAAs, some didn't have the resources. So not so much in Australia. CASA still deals with it, but in Europe, it was the CAAs, but they were so overwhelmed dealing with the registrations that then they passed it on to the police to be the ones that deal with this. So the police then have to deal with drone incidents, call out, as well as all their other work going on here. So I think it does sort of depend on where you are in the world and who has the jurisdiction to actually do this. Some civil aviation, well, some airports, for example, have their own police, and they're the ones that have the responsibility to investigate here. And how they do that, it may take some policing processes, for example. So I also think that it was it's been an evolution in their thought processes, because there's been a focus on the drones. There's been a focus on the technology, huge focus for a number of years on just the technology. You've got to take it out with your jammers, with your radar, with birds, with whatever you want. And the actual next step of thinking of the evidence and the data that you need kind of wasn't really there, because it's like, okay, I won't need that because I'll be able to take it out of the sky with all the technology. And when that sort of shows to be failed around in other places, I'm not going to say Gatwick again because everybody does. There's a lot of areas, a lot of different airports that have this. I think also that the thought processes amongst the authorities has really started to change, and I've noticed that now. So there's been a lot more interest in having something which is available and works and deals with frameworks that have been provided as guidelines, etc. So it's just a matter of, I think, a lot of these authorities or whoever has the responsibility, the jurisdiction to investigate, to understand what's out there. The same happened with the technology. You got to understand what's out there with the UAV technology, and then now they need to understand how to see what's out there for the reporting.
Absolutely. And look, there's a few interesting comments as well that follows that. And I've got a few more questions for you, but we're kind of out of time now. So it's been really interesting, Brooke. I think there's a lot of comments there that agree with the standardization, which is certainly needed, and just, an agnostic framework that people can follow that. So really appreciate your time and your talk. It was terrific to have you on. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks for joining the GDS.